Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for August 19th, 2024. Nearly every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. Of course, you can find the links at freestatecolorado.com, as well as some original articles and interviews. Recently, I interviewed John Fabricatori, who's running for Congressional District 6 against the authoritarian Jason Crow. John Fabricatori has a background working in immigrations and customs enforcement, so he has a lot to say about illegal immigration and the rise of violent crime in the Denver metro area. I also released an article about getting involved in local politics, some step by step actions you can take, as well as some other information. I posted a link to my interview on John Caldera's Advocate program. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate him having me on there in an extremely viral video I did with Danielle Jurinsky. If you haven't seen this, you got to check it out. Danielle is a city councilwoman from Aurora, and she really blows the lid on what's going on with the Venezuelan gang issue down there. It's absolutely wild. I'm also trying to help stop the Greeley food tax. I live up here in Greeley, and it's just not right that we have to pay food on or taxes on the food that we need to live. So check that out or pass that along if you know anybody in Greeley. And then just recently released an interview with Peter Bodie. He's running for House District 28 here in Colorado, and he's exposing his opponent's last minute amendment from this last previous legislative session, where she added a bill to this plumbing sunset board legislation that's going to put non licensed plumbers out of work who are engaged in backflow prevention. I mean, this is a public health issue. Of course, these legislators don't necessarily want people to be able to do these jobs unless they have pay this licensing fee and are registered with the state. It's really bad news. You got to check that out. But let's see what's in the news this week. Looking at the denverpost.com, is an end to Colorado's property tax wars in sight? Maybe, if distrust and frustrations don't get in the way. So, of course, this article is about the special session. Governor Jared Polis is calling a special session, bringing the state legislators back to the Capitol starting on August 26th to discuss property tax bills. Now, the reason they're doing this, of course, is because if they do it, as the article states here, if state lawmakers pass additional property tax cuts in the multi-day session that starts August 26th, a conservative group, Advance Colorado, has agreed to withdraw two ballot initiatives filed for the November election that would go much further. So this article kind of lays out some of that background. I've been covering this for a while, especially with my videos with the great Natalie Menton about the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment in 2020. Some of this property tax legislation that supposedly was going to solve the problem, but we'll see, and we'll see what comes of the special session. The article says the new proposal, publicly unveiled at a legislative commission Monday, as pressure for a special session increased, would build on an earlier property tax relief deal passed during the regular legislative session in May. That agreement cut property tax rates and established a cap on how much property tax revenue could grow year over year, in effect, cutting tax collections by an estimated $1.3 billion per year statewide. This latest settlement would tighten those caps and rates even more and add an estimated $270 million to that cut. In exchange, Advance Colorado has agreed to withdraw its two ballot initiatives, which would institute far steeper property tax reductions and growth constraints. If either were to pass in November, those measures would cut hundreds of millions from property tax collections and potentially lead to catastrophic reductions to the state budget in the coming years, officials said. Well, I'm not sure about the state budget because there's no statewide property tax here in Colorado, but to counties, municipalities, special districts, I'm sure they would lose a lot of money. So, very interesting here. Though polling shared with Democratic legislators suggested Initiatives 50 and 108 faced a rocky road to success in the November 5th election, a risk of them passing and the budget cuts they'd require was sufficiently serious to spark a deal, Polis and legislators said. So, I mean, Coloradans need property tax relief for sure. There's a lot of money that that the local governments, the county and the local areas are collecting in property tax revenue. People are struggling to stay in their homes. I mean, we've seen inflation. Everything is so expensive right now. It's really hard for people to make ends meet. So property tax relief must be on the table. We'll see. The fact that Michael Fields is supportive of this special session kind of gives me hope that they worked out a good deal for property tax owners here in Colorado. Time will tell. I'll definitely be covering a lot of what happens during the special session. Let's go and move on. On coloradopolitics.com, Colorado Springs City Council sends recreational marijuana sale ban to the voters, August 14th, 2024. So, very interesting here. Colorado, of course, kind of led the nation with decriminalizing, legalizing recreational marijuana. So, interesting that Colorado Springs might be pushing back against that. Let's see. Let's make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Colorado Springs residents could see competing recreational marijuana ballot questions in November. The Colorado Springs City Council voted 8 to 1 to send a question to the ballot that would ban recreational marijuana stores in the city's charter. A charter amendment would trump a city ordinance. The vote followed extensive public testimony that touched on the potential harms of marijuana, the benefits of expanding sales in town, and letting voters decide how to regulate marijuana. At the same time, a citizens group has submitted signatures to put a question on the ballot to allow recreational marijuana stores in town. The citizens' proposal would only allow the existing medical marijuana shops to transition to selling marijuana recreationally. The revenues would support public safety, mental health services, and the post traumatic stress disorder treatment program for veterans. City Clerk Sarah Johnson said the city verifying signatures on Tuesday, so she couldn't say if the citizens' question would make the ballot. The citizens group was about 8,800 signatures short, she said. Oh boy, let's see that. 2 years ago, city residents turned down a question to legalize recreation marijuana sales in town, with 57% voting against it. Wow. So pretty interesting, right, to see the dynamic, the split between Denver and Colorado Springs. I know when Colorado Springs had their new mayor, a lot of people were saying, "Oh my gosh, Colorado Springs is going to turn much more Democratic, less Republican." I don't know. This ballot measure makes me think they're pretty conservative down there on the city council. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Let's move on. From Corey Gaines, he's a great writer, teacher, but activist, paying attention to a lot of what's happening in Colorado politics. On his Substack, the Colorado Accountability Project, he says Denver's ban on slaughterhouses is a bad idea and will not just affect Denver. Speak up to drive the point home. A look at how big an industry agriculture is in Colorado. This is from August 7th, 2024. So definitely check this out. Corey Gaines does a great job of really doing some deep dives. So many news articles you read, they just touch the surface level. He really digs in and provides uh, references, almost like an appendix, I guess you'd say, an index of the information, so you really can deep dive and explore where he's getting that information from. Denver's ban on slaughterhouses is headed to the ballot. If you don't live in Denver, you may just shake your head in wonder and move on with your day. If that's the case, I urge you to resist the temptation. You should be speaking up regardless of where you live, and you should be speaking to anyone you know who is a voter in Denver. Reason being that plucking out one business in Denver, and that is what this ballot measure does, will send ripples through the whole state's economy, particularly in the ag sector. As the graphic has at the top of this post, there are a whole lot of hands that touch the products we consume. Those hands are attached to humans. Humans who make their living, who feed their families by doing something to a good and sending it down to the next step in the chain. For further context on this, and as an aid in helping you advocate to those you know in Denver, I include a couple resources. The first is a Common Sense Institute study on the economic impacts of a slaughterhouse ban. I attach the key findings of the study as screenshot 1. Let's look at that real quick here. Key findings. Even if 80% of the lost slaughterhouse economic activity in Denver is retained elsewhere in Colorado, total output in the metro Denver area will decline an estimated $760 million in 2026. It's a lot of money. If the measure passes, job losses in Metro Denver would range from 2,160 to 1,930 in 2026. Over 65% of job losses are outside of the food processing industry sector, of which slaughterhouses are a part of. Colorado is the nation's leading lamb and sheep processor. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't. In 2023 and 2022, Colorado accounted for roughly 19% of the U.S. total lamb and sheep production. Wow. So check that out. He really goes in depth. I actually have an interview coming out with Rachel Gable of the Fence Post, who he does quote in this article, really talking about how bad this slaughterhouse ban is, how it's an attack on what I called it an attack on our foundation of our civilization. You get these extreme activists who are trying to get rid of meat production. I mean, it's like they're going after food. They're making it harder for people to live, taking out jobs. I mean, it's bad news, folks. If you know anybody in Denver, tell them really to Vote no against the slaughterhouse ban. There's a lot more to it than you might think. So check out this great article from Corey Gaines over at the Colorado Accountability Project. Of course, all these links are at freestatecolorado.com. Now, from CompleteColorado.com, another great website here, an article from August 16th, 2024, Savannah Kasich. Broomfield Council passes city-run trash hauling. Opponents say something smells off. Oh gosh, it's so bad. I remember when they did this in Arvada. That's where I'm from. It's really bad news. The city should not be in control of our trash. The city should not be in control of a lot of things. The Broomfield City Council on Tuesday unanimously passed a controversial universal trash hauling ordinance on first reading, despite concerns from some residents that the measure is an unnecessary expansion of local government and that the city has more pressing issues at hand. While trash hauling has been handled by the private market until now, the ordinance changes it to a government managed contract with singular haulers assigned to different areas of the city. The program runs on volume based pricing, with the cost of recycling added into the expense. Citizens pay for the size of their trash receptacles, which the city council claims should incentivize citizens to recycle as much as possible to opt for the smallest trash cart. Of course, there's that social engineering aspect. That's one of the problems you get when you get government involved in any of these things, is they want to use it to change how people live their lives. The ordinance does not include apartments with 8 or more units or those who are part of an homeowners association (HOA). Broomfield citizens can opt out of the ordinance, but only after paying a fee, the price of which is currently not decided. Wow. Well, good on Rick Fernandez. Familiar with that name. One of the founding members of the local watchdog group, Broomfield Taxpayer Matters, says the group opposes the ordinance and wants the Broomfield government to instead focus on issues that matter more to the citizens, such as a looming 50% water rate increase. Oh my gosh, wow. Check that out. Definitely have to reach out to Rick Fernandez to see if he can get us some further information. If you live in Broomfield or know somebody who does, check this out. Again, Free State Colorado, it's about local politics. This is where we can have an impact, folks. Whether it's Denver, Broomfield, Greeley, really anywhere across the state, find out what your local government is doing and get involved. Let's move on. From another Substack here, from Corey Hutchins, who's a reporter of journalist. He reports on news inside the news in Colorado. Colorado journalists get ghosted by Dem lawmakers with new secrecy law. Got the ghosts out. It's not even Halloween yet. This is from August 16th, 2024. No press allowed. It's nice. You can see this is an AI created image here with his little caption. So interesting that people can get these graphics made these days pretty easily. But let's see what he has to say. Earlier this year, Democratic lawmakers at the state capitol rankled some journalists and their advocates when they chose Sunshine Week to pass a bill that exempted themselves from the state's open meetings laws. I've talked about this before. It is absolutely ridiculous. Despite pushback, Democratic Governor Jared Polis swiftly signed the measure into law with a note basically saying it was none of his business. Now, some members of the press corps fear lawmakers are doing just what opponents of the new law had warned. The Colorado Sun reported this week that Democrats in the state Senate met with their caucus via Zoom. They were doing so in order to talk about what would even be possible with schedules logistics involving property taxes in the state budget. The Sun reported in subscription newsletter The Unaffiliated, citing a spokesperson. The Sun tried to attend the meeting, but was barred because legislation wasn't going to be discussed and nothing is currently pending before the legislature. The digital nonprofit newsroom reported, citing the same unnamed spokesperson. This was a meeting the public and journalists previously would have been entitled to attend, said Jeff Roberts, director of the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, in a statement. How, he asked, do we know lawmakers only discussed schedules and logistics around property taxes in the state budget? Has anyone quorate for the Zoom recording if it exists? Democrats in the Colorado House held a similar meeting that journalists were not able to attend, according to media reports. The recent developments led to the Denver Post editorial board to slam the Democrats and their House leader. The editorial board had warned in an op-ed earlier this year that the new law would exempt too much of the legislature's work. Then he quotes here the Wednesday Post broadside. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Colorado politicians, these authoritarian legislators serving down in Denver, are going in the wrong direction when it comes to transparency, to sunshine, to open meetings laws. The people deserve to know what's going on. I mean, if we were supposed to be in a democracy or a representative government, then the people need to be aware of what's happening with these politicians. So check this out. Some really good information here. He goes into some other stuff, reports on journalism and kind of what's going on in Colorado's news media landscape pretty frequently there. So interesting stuff. But let's go ahead and move on. The Denver Post was really curious as to getting people's opinion on this. Elizabeth School District suspending controversial library books, alerting parents when students check out sensitive reads. This is still a big topic. Interesting that this keeps coming up. Of course, school's just starting now, so not too surprising, I guess, that this would be the timing for it. The new policy was unanimously approved by the Elizabeth School Board during a Monday meeting from Elizabeth Hernandez, August 15th, 2024. The Elizabeth School District in Elbert County is pulling 19 books from their school library shelves for parental review that officials deemed too controversial, including a book entitled It's Your World. If you don't like it, change it. Activism for Teenagers. The new policy, first reported by Colorado Community Media, was unanimously approved by the Elizabeth School Board during a Monday meeting. The books have been removed from the shelves you can read that list of books there. A curriculum review committee of school board members, school staff, and Elizabeth community members turned to online resources like banned book lists to determine what problematic books the 4 school libraries have, said Mary Powell, an Elizabeth school board member on the curriculum review committee during the school board meeting. Then the committee reviewed the books for graphic violence, sexual content, profanity, obscenity, ideations of self-harm or mental illness, religious viewpoints, drug or excessive alcohol use, and racism and discrimination. Powell said the removed books had egregious examples of those qualities. So, I mean, it's interesting stuff, right? I mean, there's obviously some books that shouldn't be in a school library. I mean, we can all agree to that. There's these advocates out there who say they shouldn't ban any books whatsoever. I mean, these are little kids. So, what do you think about that, right? I mean, there's got to be some level of that, but nonetheless, pretty interesting. I think the most important thing is parents getting involved with their kids' education. I really think that's probably the only answer, the only solution to any of this, because, sure, you can try and protect the kids from obscenities at school library, but hey, they got phones, they got the internet. If they don't have it, they have friends that do. So it's really being a more active participant in your kid's life and their school experience that probably is going to make a bigger difference than any of this. But nonetheless, interesting stuff. I don't think this issue is going away. Moving on here from CBSNews.com. I wanted to bring this up just because I really hadn't seen it. I've only seen it reported once here, and it was pretty interesting and slightly disturbing, actually. But let's see. Document reveals roosters were euthanized one day after being rescued by Colorado officials. A gut punch from August 16th, 2024. Gabriela Vidal. Let's scroll down here. Get rid of that. In the days following an Adams County-led animal rescue of 32 roosters, all Jewel Johnson could think about was what happened to those birds. On July 18th, the Adams County Sheriff's Office, with the help of Animal Control and the Bureau of Animal Protection, rescued 39 birds, 32 of which were roosters from a home in Watkins. I think it's really important we start asking questions, Johnson said. I already had the feeling that they were going to be killed. Investigators believe the arrested suspect was using the roosters for cockfighting. They're going to have to be evaluated, so we don't have a full status on them yet, said Adam Sherman with the Adams County Sheriff's Office. The birds have to be healthy enough. You have to make sure their demeanor is okay to be around other animals. That interview from July 19th was just one day after the roosters were rescued. Which was the first I heard about it, and I was surprised that I hadn't heard about it from the authorities yet. I heard it from you, Johnson told CBS News Colorado. Johnson, who runs the rooster sanctuary at Danzig's Roost in Bennett, says she was determined to find out what happened to them. She says she made multiple attempts to help authorities by possibly taking some of those roosters in, especially those that may not be safe enough to place for adoption. Moving on here. Johnson tells CBS Colorado, she learned all the roosters were killed after a call with Adams County Animal Control on July 31st. It was a gut punch, she said. In response to these claims, CBS Colorado obtained a county document with an inventory of all 39 birds, roosters, chickens, and hens rescued from the seizure. 27 of the roosters were euthanized the same day. The sheriff's office spoke about the success of the rescue. 2 more were euthanized the following day. The remainder listed as either hens or chickens were placed for adoption. So, I mean, it's interesting stuff. Of course, just the idea that they're rescuing these roosters and then they immediately kill them all. I mean, how much are they really rescuing them, I guess, is one point. But nonetheless, thought this was interesting. We don't hear a lot about cockfighting happening here in Colorado, but I guess it still goes on. So let's move on. ColoradoPolitics.com report Denver homelessness grew despite $155 million in spending. Well, who could have seen that coming? Our government, as efficient as they are and as successful as they are with every government program they run, it's not shocking at all, unfortunately, that homelessness problem is not being addressed. The root of the issue is not being addressed. However, $150 million of taxpayer money is being spent. So there you go. Homeless people living unsheltered in the city only dropped by 150, despite mayor's office claiming a dramatic drop in unsheltered homelessness. Well, of course, the mayor is always going to claim success. August 16th, 2024. I mean, if you've been to downtown Denver recently, you see there's some serious issues for sure. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston called his administration's response to homelessness a resounding success after the data from the latest point in time count was released Wednesday. But after spending nearly $155 million, $65 million more than anticipated, the overall number of homeless people in the city actually grew from 5,818 in 2023 to 6,539 this year. Well, there you go. There you go. So $65 million over budget. And there's actually more homeless people in Colorado than there in the Denver metro area than there was a year previous. I mean, come on, when you subsidize something, you're going to get more of it, right? So unless you address the root causes of what's causing this homelessness issue, the only thing programs like this do is actually bring more homeless population into that community because now there's an incentive for them to go there. Hey, they're spending $150 million for homeless people. Well, you're going to get more homeless people moving there to get, to get help or to get whatever they need. So it's not too surprising, but ultimately it's not solving the problem, which I think is what the voters, what the taxpayers, and even the mayor's office would want is to solve the actual problem. And the city saw only 150 fewer unsheltered homeless people when compared to last year's count. Wow. In a news release, the Johnston administration avoided citing the overall picture of homelessness still growing in the city, despite the significant resources allocated to it. Instead, he pointed to the 83% reduction in unsheltered family homelessness and the 23% decrease in tent and vehicle-based homelessness. So he's, cherry picked some data to make it look good, of course. Why wouldn't you? Last year, there were 1,423 people living unsheltered on Denver streets. This year, that number stood at 1,273, a reduction of only 150 people. Now, don't get me wrong, getting 150 people on the street is great, but $150 million for 150 people, $1 million per person. I'm sure you could figure out a better way to make that happen. You would think, right? So there you go, people. And of course, you got to remember what we talked about previously. Denver's going to come and ask for more tax money. Denver's going to say, hey, listen, folks, hey, Denver taxpayers, we just need more and more of your hard earned money. Never mind the fact that inflation's through the roof. You're struggling to pay your increased property taxes, your increased rent, groceries, gas. And never mind that you're struggling to this. Maybe you're getting laid off, but hey, we want more of your tax money so we can keep spending it in a way that has not been successful. What's this return on investment? Why should Denver voters give in another dime to the city government? There's no good answer for that. But let's go ahead and move on. TheColoradoSun.com. Number of new Colorado businesses drops 21.7%, nearly a year after filing fee discount ends. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be a pessimist here, but nonetheless, nearly a 22% drop in new businesses. Not a great sign of the times, right? CU Lead's economists saw the sharpest decline in new business filings since 2005, but the other financial trends seem to say business is just getting back to normal. So, there you go. I guess that part of what they're saying, and it does make sense, don't get me wrong, a 21.7% dip in folks filing to start a business in Colorado during the second quarter was largely attributed to the end of a program more than a year ago that reduced filing fees to $1, according to the latest quarterly data from the Colorado Secretary of State's office. It was the sharpest decrease year over year in the state that we've been tracking since 2005. New business filings reached a second quarter high last year at $54,940. The fee returned to $50 in June 2023, and now 1 year later, filings dropped to $43,029, and 29 for the quarter, excuse me, not dollars. That's still above prior years, including years before the pandemic. So, it makes sense, right? You're basically cutting people a break. It was discounted. Now prices go back up. You're going to see less demand, but nonetheless, That's still a big jump there. So interesting stuff. Good to see businesses are still growing. Hopefully, there's a good, strong entrepreneurial spirit, and hopefully, the state legislature does not get in the way of allowing businesses to form here in Colorado. Let's go to move on from Axios.com. August 13th, 2024. Controversial subject here. Colorado's lagging childhood vaccination rates, an accident waiting to happen. Well, there you go. No bias in that headline. From Colorado K through 12 immunization rates, share of students fully immunized by academic year. More Colorado parents are opting out of vaccinating their kids on religious or personal grounds, alarming local health officials. I wonder why that is. I wonder if the events over the last 4 years since the COVID epidemic, or whatever you want to call it, since that whole COVID scare, maybe turned some people off to this idea of vaccinations. That's my guess. I mean, it's interesting to see this trend. You would think that it would move in the opposite direction, right? That's what people always think would happen. But nonetheless, the decreasing number of vaccinated children in Colorado could leave the state vulnerable to a resurgence of avoidable diseases like measles, which have made a comeback worldwide amid falling immunization rates. 92.1% Colorado's K through 12 students received all 6 mandatory vaccines in the 23 to 24 school year or had a valid exemption, largely unchanged from their 91.9% in the prior year, according to the latest data from the state's public health department. The state's goal is for every school to have at least 95% of the students' population vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. So very interesting to see how it's dropping, that people are maybe not so interested in these things. I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe it's a sign. Why do you think it's happening? Maybe a sign of the times, a lack of trust in the medical system, a lack of trust in government. Maybe parents are rejecting this for some other reason. I don't know. Interesting stuff. Let's move on. From Denver Gazette, faulting new law, parents sue Colorado Brighton School District over daughter's gender transition. Now, this is a big story. I definitely want to get involved with these people suing, at least the law firm, because this story needs to get some more press, that's for sure. The lawsuit claims the counselor arranged therapy sessions on the counselor's computer to hide the student's gender transition. Now imagine you have a young kid, maybe confused about things like all kids are, going to school, a trusted adult tells them that they can, make some changes to their body. Don't tell your parents, we can do some things for you. Just don't tell your parents. I mean, it's got to rub people the wrong way, right? I mean, how can anybody find hiding stuff from parents acceptable? August 13th, 2024. A Brighton couple is suing the state of Colorado, alleging that a law dealing with transgender identity violates parents' constitutional rights and that their daughter, with the encouragement of a school district counselor, transitioned to a boy in secret. The couple filed the August 7th lawsuit against the Department of Education and the 27J School District in Brighton. The suit seeks to challenge the constitutionality of House Bill 1039, claiming it violates parents' rights as outlined in the First and 14th Amendments of the American Constitution. The Colorado law requires all public schools to use a child's preferred name, subjecting schools to discrimination claims with the state's Civil Rights Commission if they refused to use that preferred name. It's one of several measures in this year's legislative session that dove into school children's transgender identity. Quote, when we went to the well demanding House Bill 23-1039 be stopped, and they wouldn't listen. We told the Dems there would be lawsuits, and rightfully so. The counselors, teachers, and schools have no right stepping into a parental role that takes kids down a path of no return. Republican Representative Brandy Bradley posted on X on Saturday. I hope more parents come forward and sue, she added. The lawsuit said states across the country are grappling with a mental health crisis among young people and that a vulnerable group includes students struggling with their gender identity. Sadly, the state of Colorado and public schools across the state have erected barriers between these children and their parents, the very people who love and support them, leading to more isolation and harm, the lawsuit said. And the government has violated parents' constitutional rights in the process. Wow. The lawsuit said when their daughter was a 14-year-old freshman attending Brighton High School, she asked a school counselor to help her transition to a male under the identity of ZD. Following school policy, the counselor assisted AD with a transition, the lawsuit states, but neither the counselor nor anyone else at the school told the parents. Instead, the school concealed the transition from the parents, referring to AD as AD in conversations and communications with the parents while referring to AD as ZD at school. The lawsuit claimed that the counselor took the process further, helping AD talk to a therapist through the state's I Matter program, which provides free virtual therapy sessions to youth. Gosh, I want to. Do you really want your kids talking to some stranger virtually for free on these issues? Don't think so. To conceal this, the lawsuit said the counselor arranged the therapy sessions on the counselor's own computer so AD's parents could not discover that the gender transition process was taking place. In the spring of AD's freshman year, the parents began to suspect that the school had socially transitioned their daughter in secret. But by then, AD's trust of her parents had deteriorated due to the school's action, the lawsuit claimed. The parents are loving and supportive, and they wanted their daughter to explore the root of her distress through therapy rather than view transitioning as a panacea that would solve all problems. But because AD was convinced that transitioning was the only answer, her parents' alternative approach appeared unsupportive. While the Does informed the counselor they did not want AD to be socially transitioned, the school nevertheless continued to treat AD as she were a boy. Over the next year, the lawsuit said AD came to realize she did not want to have a transgender identity. Geez, imagine that. Wow. I mean, it's heavy stuff. It's scary stuff. It's tough for parents, for kids out there these days. And of course, these politicians, these government officials are not making any better. So, link at freestatecolorado.com if you want to read the rest of that, but absolutely crazy stuff. Let's move on. Last article of the week from the Great Complete Colorado, August 9th, 2024. Study finds special interest tax deals eating up Coloradans' TABOR refunds. So, maybe you're new to Colorado, maybe you don't fully understand the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, but basically TABOR, aka the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, says that if the state government, or really any government, collects too much tax money, they have to refund that money back to the people of Colorado, to the taxpayers who paid it, basically. That's the spirit of the law. So, of course, politicians don't like that. They want to keep every penny they can from your wallet, your bank account, every penny they can take. So they found some tricky ways to do it, as this article explores. Governor Jared Polis has consistently said he wants to lower the Colorado income tax, even claiming that legislation passed earlier this year would deliver on that promise. But new research shows that billions of dollars in special interest tax breaks also passed this year, and all likelihood means broad-based income tax relief is off the table for the foreseeable future. Earlier this year, Governor Polis signed Senate Bill 24-228, temporarily lowering the state's income tax rate on a sliding scale as a refund mechanism when surplus revenue under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights TABOR is more than $300 million in a given fiscal year, with the maximum rate reduction from 4.4% to 4.25% kicking in at the $1.5 billion surplus. TABOR is a constitutional amendment that requires, among other things, state revenues collected in excess of a formula of population growth plus inflation be refunded back to taxpayers, unless voters consent to forego those refunds at the ballot box. An income tax rate reduction is but one potential refund mechanism available to the state. According to a newly released issue brief from the Independence Institute, a free market think tank in Denver, the more than $10 billion, cumulative over a decade, worth of what are called tax expenditures passed in 2024 will eat up that TABOR surplus, effectively halting future income tax cuts. So, folks, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. These people down at the state legislature want to take every penny you earn. They want to control your life. They want to keep more and more of that money. Don't give in. Do not give them any more of your tax money, and do everything possible to get some of these anti-Coloradan people out of office. I do want to talk at the end here about a great meetup going on this week. This is Wednesday, August 21st on meetup.com here. Justice for Julian with Kendra Christian of Denver Action to Free Assange. So check this out. As you know, Julian Assange is now free back in Australia, from what I understand. And there's been a good effort made by this Free Assange Denver group, and they're going to speak about the whole situation. Reading here, the greatest journalist of all time has been was been in prison for 5 years without even being charged with a crime until he was finally released on June 24th. Come join us as we talk about this travesty once again. Kendra Christian, founder of Denver Action to Free Assange, will be coming back to Liberty on the Rocks to give us any updates on Julian and the chances and what happened with his relief. They're meeting at the Independence Institute. Doors open at 6. Talk starts at 7. Drinks are provided. Anyone is welcome to bring their own food or food to share. So check that out. It's going to be a great event. The Independence Institute allows the free use of their building. Wednesday, August 21st at 6 p.m. Go on the Meetup to find the details. You want to go on the north side of the building, kind of in the alleyway by the parking area, and get in through that door, not the main door to the Independence Institute. But I want to say I appreciate you for watching, for being here every week, and I thank you very much. Free State Colorado have a lot of plans in the future, and couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much. Take care.